Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Gray here on the Black Man Unfiltered Network. I'm Mr. Bennett with my partner, as always. Uh-oh. Oh, you muted.
This is Sparta!
The Ghost of Sparta, a.k.a. Peter, a.k.a. Panayiotis. Yeah, so my brother, what's going on?
What's going on, man? A nice snowy day.
I know. So I'm just waiting now. Are you one of those guys who likes to shovel as it snows? You just like to have everything be over with and then shovel afterwards?
So you're gonna hate me. I don't shovel at all, actually, because I live in an apartment complex.
Oh, well, there
But
you go.
when I did have my house, I wait till it's done. I'm not shoveling every few hours. I got a big ass old school Craftsman 5-speed snowblower.
So do I. So do I. Craftsman. Yeah, it was one of the first purchases I made in the house when I bought it.
Yeah, I had mine for over 20 years, and that thing still runs. I think I got a
Same thing. Yeah,
I have it outside my apartment, like chained up, and people always offer, "I'll buy it for $50." No, 200.
Yep.
If you want it, 200.
Oh yeah, rather than spending 1,500 for a new one, absolutely.
Yeah,
definitely.
200 is a good deal, I think. But people,
Absolutely.
people are trying to, and they're going to dime me. I'm not giving it up less than 200.
Absolutely. No, good deal. So yeah, definitely. I'll wait till it's over, and because a lot of times you don't really understand like the physical work. I mean, as much as I work out, there's definitely nothing like, again, shoveling snow or doing that kind of physical labor and whatnot. And a lot of times I don't realize how much I've worked until it's over. And a lot of times I'll just fall out, shower up, take a nap or whatever, and I'm out for like 7, 8 hours straight just from the exhaustion of it. So yeah, so hopefully it won't be too bad tomorrow. I think it's still snowing lightly near me, but I think it's supposed to end soon. So yeah, I'll just get up in the morning. I'll just be part of my morning routine. But
Yeah, this is supposed to end midnight tonight. But it said it was supposed to start between 9 and 10 or earlier today, but it started later. So
yeah, it started about 1 o'clock around my area. Yep.
yeah, so it started about like when I got it, it would start flurrying when I left church, when I went to a church. But when I came out, it would start coming down. By the time I got home, it was coming down. I said, for once, Father, you got done early.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. For sure. But again, thank you all for. Yeah. I'm sorry. What was that?
Let's get into it.
Yeah, but just before we get in, again, thank you all for joining us tonight. Mariana, good to see you tonight. Certainly, as you see scrolling at the bottom of the screen, our Cash App. So again, you consider the Cash App for the Black Man Unfiltered Network. Anything that you want to drop to us personally, please, certainly we appreciate the support that you give us. But just as you come in tonight, also make sure you hit the like button. Certainly helps the algorithm. Now, again, this is also simulcasting also on the Sparta HQ Network. So make sure, man, we had a riveted debate last night in the hangout, talking about books versus movies and whatnot. You saw a side of me that I rarely show, but it definitely we kind of got into it in a friendly manner, of course, but we definitely got into it last night, and certainly, so definitely visit the Sparta HQ Network, hit the like button there as he's simulcasting there as well on these platforms. But tonight's topic we're going to talk about is drugs. And we're not necessarily going to be talking about the good ones. However, it's getting more and more of a gray area because the quote unquote good ones are certainly being intermixed in, and you have people certainly being addicted to certainly those substances as well. So again, prescription addictions and whatnot is certainly on the rise, and sometimes it's hard to know who the real drug dealers are these days. When it comes to what's being out there, but obviously this is a global issue in terms of managing it. So I kind of want to talk about it a little bit just from this global perspective, in that human beings have had a long standing historical affiliation with substances in their bodies besides food and water. I'll just say that there's always been something that people have had. But from a True North Beer Company, hey, thank you for joining us tonight. Appreciate you stopping through. But how'd you want to take on this topic? Go for it. Go for it.
So, guys, if you are a beer guy, go check out Truth Northman. I know him personally. His products are the top of the line. Please go check out his products. Support one of my guys. He is really good at his stuff. You're going to find a scent you like, a butter. Trust me, go check him out. He is a legit guy, and there's no bullshit. What you see, you get. I had to throw him out there. I'm sorry.
Hey, True North Beard. I represent the ball contingency.
Oh, here
So
we go.
any products that you may have for the bold and beautiful, benevolent ball brothers out there, if you have anything for us, I'd be more than happy to certainly to investigate and explore your products. But what do you have for the clean shaven? But that's a yeah. If you have anything for me, just let me know.
Shut the fuck up.
I was waiting. That might have
Yeah. So shout out to the True North Beer Company. But from what perspective did you want to take this on tonight? Because I have kind of like a sort of a global view. But where do you want to drive this conversation tonight?
A reason I came up with the topic, I've been realizing more and more this pandemic, I want to call it almost, drug use, pills, blow, whatever your substance of choice, even nicotine, is a form of drug. I don't care how you cut the apple. One is illegal, one is not illegal. The problem is people are getting addicted to this stuff. Now you're gonna have the debate like, well, there's no such thing as addiction. You is in your head. Okay, I'll give you that. But some people get addicted. I have a very addictive personality. I know that. So when I start something like YouTube, for example, I'm addicted to this. I love doing this. Is I seen people get in trouble over stupid shit. Want to be like you got hooked up in pills, for example. Maybe it was because you got a surgery or something like that. And next minute, you know, you can't live without them. You can't function without them. So we need to have this conversation, I believe, now. Because this conversation could maybe help somebody, maybe get some help. Maybe say, I don't need this. They're right. I'm destroying my life. Why not have that conversation? You know me, man. I like doing conversations that nobody wants to talk about. Not even the gray area, the black area. Like, this is one conversation nobody really talks about online. And I wonder why. It is an area we need to explore tonight.
Yeah, for sure. I'm kind of thinking about it along similar lines. Is that humanity? And again, we're both kind of nerds in that way. You know, we read a lot of science fiction and whatnot, and a lot of the science fiction, it always tends to paint this kind of similar story that we're all in this sort of dystopian sort of future where drugs are such a part of our lives that there's such a dependency on our joy, our happiness, our emotions are being managed. And it seems like today it's like people just need a drug for anything just to function normally within a 24-hour period. So there's a drug to help you get up. There's a drug to help you get down. There's one to help you relax. There's a drug that helps you in the bedroom. There's a drug for, there seems to be a marriage politics to our pain. You know, good to see you tonight. We're becoming so dependent on drugs. I mean, especially as much as we talk about health and, you know, wellness, fitness, exercise, good diets, and all of these things, but we still can't seem to, you know, with everything that we know about health and fitness and nutrition and things. We were talking about body image on your Thursday show, and I was making sort of in my closing statements, it's like, you know, back in the day, Pumping Iron came out in 1975, and you start to see in the 70s and the 80s the explosion of Nautilus fitness centers and you know the aerobic crazes, and people, you know, seem like they're living a healthier lifestyle, but it seems like we're fatter than ever, and the health outcomes are such, and we've just grown more dependent on drugs for just our daily existence. So I'm kind of questioning why that is, and it's not just, it's certainly the problem is certainly in the States, but it's again across the globe, that we've always needed something to help us get through some things, and people make justifications for them. Well, look, if it comes out of the ground, it must be a good thing. You know, the hashish and the hash and the weed, and you know, these are, you know, people talk about the benefits of them. And I'm not saying that there's certain things that aren't beneficial. Like I said, I had a sister. Well, I have a sister who, you know, she's had a lot of injuries over the years, and you know, she was on a cocktail of different drugs. and she started, she got a license, to smoke the medicinal marijuana, and she was able to, wean herself off of a lot of those drugs. And it got to a point where it's like, man, are these drugs really helping you? You don't know about the side effects of these things. And so the fact that she was able to make that transition, my views kind of changed on it, because I've never smoked weed. I've never drank. I've never done a lot of substances. And so I was always a little skeptical about, weed and whatnot. But, certainly her experience with it was such. And, when I saw her, this was a couple years ago, we first had the conversation. And when I saw how she was able to function and have movement and things that just weren't there earlier, it certainly made me a believer. So I'm not saying that there's not a place for medicinal purposes, but it just seems like everybody's just in a space where they're just looking to cope on life. And so I need something, to get through, whether it be alcohol, whether it be tobacco or weed or harder substances and whatnot, just to get through things. So, we need to, maybe, talk about, why it is do we feel that we need to have this, this conversation.
See, I had a conversation with somebody a few years back, and one of his buddies was hooked on something. If I'm not mistaken, it was pills. And his response was to me, I don't blame him, because it's hard to deal with people every day. I deal with people on a daily basis. I think you too, Paul. And so you cannot deal with people, but you get high instead. That makes no sense to me during work hours too, by the way. So that is a no-no in my opinion. If you cannot deal with people, you should not be in a business or a line of work you're dealing with people on a daily basis. When you need some kind of substance just to function, not medically, just mentally, that is a red flag for me. When you need to be hooked on something just to deal with whatever you're dealing with, how about you speak to the therapist first? So that, or have a different outlet, the gym, or gaming, whatever your outlet is. It should be some kind of substance. And in a fitness world, there are somethings there. Let's be honest here, Paul.
Yeah, for sure.
Bodybuilders, steroids, number one. Kids go online all the time, like trying to look
steroids, growth hormone, insulin. So I mean, there's definitely, in the sporting world in general, there's certainly a competitive reason for the use of a lot of these substances. And again, there's a lot of side effects to those that people, in sometimes in cases, they even go, they know what the consequences are to their use. But the question they ask is for an opportunity to win or to gain fame or fortune or what have you. They're willing to take those risks. But I think, Boss Man, I think he made a good point in the chat. That we may want to start this conversation by describing what is a drug, definition-wise. So I'm looking up here for this is from the National Cancer Institute. And it says a drug is any substance other than food that is used to prevent, diagnose, treat, or relieve symptoms of a disease or abnormal condition. Drugs can also affect how the brain and the rest of the body work and cause changes in mood, awareness, thoughts, feelings, or behavior. Some types of drugs, such as opioids, may be abused or lead to addiction. So there seem to be two categories here, but I certainly like the first one. That's why I kind of started off saying I want to make a distinction between drugs and medicine. Because again, if the idea of taking it is for to treat something, if something is wrong, and you're looking to treat it with a drug to relieve the symptoms or promote healing or some sort of thing, now that's one thing. But when drugs are used to sort of alter states of consciousness in ways that I think escape reality, I don't think that's necessarily a proper use of it. So, tonight's conversation, I'm assuming that we're not talking about medicines,
No.
and we're not talking, or even drugs that again have some benefits. Like I said, the medicinal marijuana apparently is having some benefits for users that allow them to get off of some of the hard medicines that people are doing. But I guess this conversation is somewhat being framed for those who are looking at these drugs as a means of escape from, the realities of life versus how to cope with life. I think that's more so where where I would think the intent of this conversation is going. Do you agree with that, or you have another?
Yeah, I totally agree. Maybe we can touch a little bit if we have time about the, marijuana cards and all that stuff. But we don't need to go there if we don't have time. I'm okay with that. But we need to talk about the illegal stuff. Let's start with sports thing for a second here, because we just already touched base a little bit on it. Because I have a theory I want to get off my chest. So football players, for example, if they get hit day after day, bam, and they can get up and go ahead and be fine the next day and play on a Monday night. They play a hard game on Sunday, the next day they play. Don't sit there and tell me the NFL, board tests for steroids. I feel they also look the other way in a way, because I think these guys are on something, because you cannot perform in that level day after day after day, week after week, that game bruised up on a daily basis. No way. I don't believe it. And that's my personal opinion. And I have met bodybuilders like you have. One thing I asked them a question about, and they avoid it at first, but a few who do answer the question about the steroids, and they told me, if I can take one drug the rest of my life, but I know it's going to kill me in 6 or 10 or 20 years later, just to win my championship, I would do it on a heartbeat. I prefer ending my life sooner and not being a champ. I prefer being a champ and losing my life sooner.
Yeah.
How fucked up does that sound?
I think it depends on your perspective. I mean, I've known athletes who've done this in a variety of sports. Boxers, I've known. If you're talking about people who, for example, come from generational poverty, and if they believe that their ascension, if they're using these substances in order to get there, but there's opportunity to make generationally changing money. I think for a lot of those people, they think it's a trade-off versus just being what they may deem average, and you just live out your life and whatnot, and you get to an old age, but again, nobody remembers you. There's no change. It's just cyclical from there. I think a lot of people, make that change. The famous Rocky speech in Rocky 2, where Rocky clearly has an eye injury. He shouldn't be fighting. He shouldn't be medically cleared to fight. But again, he tried being a regular guy, right? He worked in the meatpacking plant. He tried to be an actor, all these things. And it's like, look, fighting is all I know. So yeah, there is the risk that I may be blind after this fight. I may lose everything or whatever. And we all know what kind of happens after that. But I think a lot of people take that on. You talked about passion earlier, or that you showed addictive personality. If that's truly what you think you need to be doing, there is a mindset that says that I would rather have a life than just living. And I don't know if I can necessarily dissuade someone from that. Again, based on their circumstances. If someone's in a position, it's like, look, you could be anything you want to be. You're smart, you're intelligent. You can there's a lot of different avenues for you to take besides this one. Then that might be a different conversation. But for some people, if it's like, look, I got this body, I got this, I got this one lane, I'm not necessarily seeing other ones. That's a hard conversation to have. And there are times where I think I'm not sure if I'm the one to dissuade them from that path, if in fact it means, again, doing something, or at least having the satisfaction that I've reached this certain level of achievement. The average NFL career is, I think, 3.2 years. And so what you're able to do in that time, or the sacrifices that you made taking substances or whatnot to get to that level, I think more times than not, even though we know more about concussions and CTE and all those things, the opportunity for advancement, I think, is greater a lot of times, and not to mention just the passion for the sport. So you have that going on as well. What would you rather be? I can be a bean counter somewhere, or I could be doing something that I truly love. And it doesn't even have to be a physical thing. There's people in the geek space who love playing video games, who love, that whole, side of things like we see at Comic-Con. And that's where they want to be. They'll never be rich, but they would rather live in that and make a marginal living in that world than getting a quote 9-to-5 job and being some corporate exec somewhere or something like that. That's not aligned with their principle for personality. So people make those kind of choices all the time. But as far as with the drugs, outside of those things that are performance enhancing in pursuit of a specific goal, it just seems like people are finding themselves in situations where they may not be coping very well with the realities that they found themselves in, and now they find themselves addicted to substances that lead to more problems seemingly down the line. So there's still an issue with why is it that so many people are finding themselves having these dependencies on things that may have been originally intended, and some not. I mean, there's some hard substances out there that no one should ever take under any circumstances. But there's still things that, they're getting themselves hooked on. But the larger issues as to why so many people feel the desperation to have to go that route. And it seems like for a lot of these people, they're not coming back.
That is the scary part. Once you cross that bridge and get into those substances, you can't just walk away sometimes. Definitely as an athlete, that that shot, that pill, that whatever you're using, you play better. You get stronger, you're bigger. But you don't want to walk away because you're at the top of your game. You may only have 3.5 years to prove yourself if they extend your contract.
Mm-hmm.
And that may be do or die. Is it that worth it? For some people, yes, it is. It's very worth it. I personally don't see the risk and reward. That's me personally.
Mm-hmm.
Again, if you give me an option, take this pill and lose 20 years of my life, or don't take the pill and live 20 more, I'll pick not taking it. I prefer being an average Joe, and I'm okay with that.
But what if you're, again, the opportunity to be beyond average, that you are a known person, there's money involved, 6-7 figures on the line that you could possibly earn, take care of your, again, talk about legacy here. For your mom, if anything happened to you, she's taken care of. Those who are closest to you are taken care of or whatnot. Because that's the carrot, right? That's the thing in front. It can't be just, well, I live 20 years more or I don't live 20 years. That's a pretty easy decision. But it's what comes with, if you're going to take something away from me, you're going to make that Faustian deal like Ghost Rider did, or these folks we know from the comics or whatever. There has to be a benefit. So what I think what benefit if I was going to take 20 years off of your life, let's say the average person dies of 70, I think 74, 75 in the US or whatever. So let's say you die at 55. But then what would it take? What could I give you that you would think it would be worth it? And if there's nothing, there's nothing. That's fine. I mean, if you choose the life, then no one's going to fight you.
At least at this moment,
and that's fine. Absolutely.
I don't see what is worth more than my life, because if I'm gone, she's not going to be happy. Even all this money is going to be somebody. I'm going to have all this number one doctors, all this stuff. Without her son, she's not going to have a life.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with anything else I do in life. It's like, okay, I'm not in the picture, but it evolves around me. The whole project is going to fall apart. Simple. You always need a leader. But without a leader in present, it's been proven time and time again. Things fall apart without a leader.
Mm-hmm.
Onassis. Ever heard of him?
Who's that?
Onassis.
Onassis or Onassis?
Onassis was he was literally the most richest person.
Jackie Kennedy married him, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
He owned Olympic Airline. Do you remember that company, any chance?
No, I don't. That's
was
before me, but yeah. But I know he's a very wealthy Greek person. Yeah, tycoon.
I used to fly in those back in the day.
Oh, okay.
All the way to in 2000s. They got bought out of a different company in 2000. But when it was an Olympic airline, they were the number one airline to travel. Doesn't matter where you flew, you picked Olympic. But when Onassis died, his own empire came crawling apart.
Mm-hmm.
Because nobody knew how to take care of it. Nobody. He really didn't. Kids wasn't. I don't know if he had kids or trained kids. I'm not sure the whole story behind that part. But he had no successor. I have no kids right now.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing you can offer me right now is a kid. Have a kid in those 20 years. Then maybe now you're talking something.
Mm-hmm.
But no. If you tell me I can have a kid and a family, okay, lose 20 years. Now we're talking. That's to me, that's more than money.
Right.
And I have mentioned this multiple times.
Right.
But is it worth my life? One thing I do know, when you become a parent, you change how you look at things. Or am I wrong, Paul?
Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt. I mean, it definitely becomes a selfless lifestyle. But having said that, again, if I was in a situation, again, I had my kids and there was an opportunity for me to do something productive to make money and making sure that they would be taken care of, would I be swayed to do it? Again, it'd be depend on offer, but I don't know if I could necessarily say I'd be close to that. You know what I mean? So again, it like I said, it depends on the circumstances for which you find yourself. How desperate are you to solve or resolve a situation? And a lot of times those situations are made in haste, and then you find yourself, like I said, in a position where you can't come back from it. But for most people, I don't even think they're coming back from that. I just think that a lot of people are just the fact that they're just dealing with life in general, getting up every day, trying to survive, trying to earn a living, trying to have good relationships, trying to, what everybody thinks is what should be a normal human existence. But you still have people who are, like I said, in a bad way. And from what I've seen, and maybe this might be a time to introduce, I did have some slides, usually I like to present stuff. Maybe it's a time to bring this up. And I got a lot, I don't know if I'm going to get through all of this. I think I'm going to sort of rapidly go through this, but it seems to certainly be rampant in a lot of these developed nations. So it's not even so much about poverty. So I think one of the discussions we might have to talk about is in developed countries, why is the drug use so high versus poor? Now, part of it is going to be money. You got to buy the stuff. But when you talk about in some of the largest, and it doesn't matter your political system, you could be in a democracy like the U.S. or a semi communist type of rule like in China, or you have here India as well. I mean, these are some of the largest, most powerful nations in the world, but it seems like there's a price to pay when you become that big or that powerful. A lot of indulgence seems to come with that. Thank you, Lady Navoa, the $1.99 super chat. The fire drug shouldn't be taken for fun and pleasure. But we have to certainly recognize that we are hooked on a lot of these substances. And here, just a quick breakdown. This is from the World Population Review. So again, got these stats online. So obviously, United States, not the most populous country, but the most drug users. But guess what? China's right in back of it. So if you want to talk about value system, if you want to talk about structure, I don't know if it matters as much. But a lot of these nations, Russia, Brazil, United Kingdom, Japan, I mean, these are developed nations, and they seem to have a lot of these problems. But even still, it still is a relatively small part of the population. So if you go to the last column, you still talk about just over 1% of Americans that have a drug issue or who take these sort of drugs on a regular basis. But there are other countries that have a much higher per capita drug use than others. I just put in here, for example, by this category. So again, in terms of frequency of opiate use, for example, Afghanistan, Iran, Russia, Maldives, Ukraine, much higher than the U.S. And I just put Greece at the bottom. Greece seems to be relatively good. So I was going to ask you about that. From your knowledge, does Greece have a drug issue as a nation? Based on the stats, it doesn't appear to be, or at least something that's not raising red flags. You're talking about less than 0.25% of the people that are addicted to opioids. But has drugs, from your experience, been an issue in Greece? For the most part, they were pretty low on the list.
I was growing up in Greece. It was a humongous problems. Heroin, Pacific heroin.
No.
Because I remember even going to the park, needles were everywhere. When I mean everywhere. We were to the point my grandma didn't take me to parks anymore because that's how bad it was. So they used to sweep the park like 3-4 times in an hour to make sure no kids get poked. Because these are parks for kids. They're gated. They open up for a certain time from AM to PM. Kids go play and lock them up. So I remember I was at every end of the year they do like a class project. That year we were doing some old school dances, and we're sitting outside, and I'm look behind her, like literally this guy literally just shot up his girlfriend right in front of us. He didn't give a shit, and I'm like I couldn't process it at first. So as I got older, the drug problem was getting less and less. They were really cracking down. I mean, SWAT teams were all over the place. I'm not talking they were armed with like little Glocks or 1911. They were armed with AK-47s. They're ready to fucking shoot anybody at this point. They had to shoot to kill.
So drug dealing. So where was this come from? Was this first where the drugs were coming from? And was there like a lot of just drug dealing? Was it like a cartel situation? Like what was going on where that
A9s? That was the highest gang you can get, or mafia, whatever you want to call them. All right. So these guys were bringing everything in. At this point in Greece, they were cracking down, and they pointed this at them. And it's the first time in history in Greece they pointed an organization crime to a certain gang or mafia. So I'll put it this way: these guys are so fucking crazy. They fucking blew up. They use a PG RPG to blow up a bank to steal the money out of it. RPG.
Wow.
In the neighborhood. That's something you see in like a game. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna blow this building up because it's a game. We don't believe. I'm like, this shit was really happening. I'm literally hearing kaboom. I'm like, what the hell was that? My grandma, don't you dare go out those doors and look. And 2 hours later, we're watching on TV. Oh, the bank that we got blown up on an RPG by these guys. And they were connected with politicians. So they were smuggling the drugs in. They were cutting them because they were pure drugs, obviously. And they were selling them. You don't, more you cut, more money you make.
Exactly. Yeah.
So where they were getting, I have no idea, to be honest with you. I don't know that much about it.
Yeah. But it seems like there was a hard crackdown by Greece to literally take out these drug dealers or gangs of this organized syndicate that they used
Correct.
aggressive action in order to do so, and that could possibly be because again these numbers are pretty recent, so that could possibly be about the relatively low drug usage overall in Greece that they took a hard stand against it. But again, you have countries like Russia, for example, that seems to have a pretty high account. They're pretty militaristic, but but again, a lot of developed nations, which I was a little surprised to see on this list, but it doesn't seem necessarily always tied to poverty or what have you. In the developed nations, there seems to be that. Here's another stat. So again, they use this stat called DAILY. DAILY is an abbreviation for Disability Adjusted Life Years, a theoretical unit of measure which represents the number of healthy years of life lost due to the use of illicit drugs, average across an entire population. So it's saying like in the United States, if I read this number right, it's basically saying that an American will lose almost 7 years of their life just due to the rampant drug use. And again, you have some of these Estonia, Belarus, a lot of these countries here, again, like I said, develops, even UAE seems to have, a pretty high percentages. Denmark, which you think is as socialistic and clean, and people talk about how clean a lot of these Scandinavian countries are. But again, there seems to be problems there. So again, I don't know if you can tie this necessarily to a specific cause. Greenland, I'm like, who even lives in Greenland? But it's definitely something that that is pretty prevalent.
So I want to bring something to attention really fast.
Mhm.
Russia. I worked with a kid. It was from Russia. And sweet kid overall. Look, crazy if I get about sweet kid. He was like 19, 18. He just came to the States for a better life. Yeah. But as I'm talking to him, I found some more information about the kid. So the kid was literally in prison in Russia for drug use.
Mhm.
And he was telling me the crime in Russia, what you see on TV is what they want to show.
Mhm.
But what really goes behind closed doors or closed cameras or whatever you want to call it, it's a different world, he goes to me. Russia, even before this whole war happened,
Mhm.
it's a huge crime and drug problem.
Mhm.
I'm like, really? I'm like, you name a drug, I can get you to in minutes. It doesn't take me long to get it. He goes,
Right.
and if it's too expensive, I have 20 other dealers who can get it for a better price.
Mm.
You can get it. It's like buying cigarettes, he goes to me. And I was shocked when I heard that.
Yeah. So much for the iron fist. I just want to read this stat here. What is the drug capital of the world? In terms of consumption, the United States is the clear drug capital of the world. In terms of production, it's Afghanistan, the country most likely to earn that title. While opium poppies are cultivated in 57 countries, 95% of the world's opium comes from a mere 3 nations: Afghanistan, which is the world leader, Mexico, and Myanmar. Similarly, countries like Colombia and Bolivia and Peru account for nearly all the cocoa or the cocaine in the world. So it's interesting that you kind of know where the main population centers are for where this stuff is coming from. But then the question you also have to ask yourself is this a supply problem or a demand problem? And where do you attack it? If you know that 95% of the opium is coming from these 3 nations, then what then is, where do you put your focus on, for people not to take it? Or do you do more aggressive action against those nations for populating the world with so much of these substances? So that's always that sort of geopolitical discussion that people have. But just in terms of your thought process, where do you think the emphasis seemed like with Greece, they took a very heavy-handed approach. They attacked the supply side and took those cartels or those gangs out. But do you think that should be how the quote unquote drug war, if you want to call it that, is that's really how it needs to be waged? Or do you think it's more so on the supply side? We have to ask the questions: why are we taking all these drugs to begin with?
So I think it's more demand, not supply. Demand, because people are getting hooked on this. I mean, they want it. It's like buying cigarettes, buying a drink, buying whatever you have, whatever you want something, there's a demand into it, a supply. So demand is there, is always going to be there. But when you want something, is it now a different story? So I really, really deeply inside believe me, it's not a supply thing, it's a demand thing. I want this. I'll do anything for this. I use my mother, for example. All right. As much that crazy woman drives me up a goddamn fucking wall. But one thing I won't fuck with it is her cigarettes. I'll explain to you why. Now, my mother's been smoking for 50, 60 years. All right. She was a 2-pack person. And we're not talking about the shorties. I'm talking about the hundreds.
Well, you've also said in the past, I mean, smoking in Greece is as common as like anything, right? I mean, exactly, it's pretty.
Yeah. I'm not going to argue that, but I'm talking about her health now when it was starting to get worse. So we tried to take it away from her. I have never seen that lady so nasty in my life. She has some moments, don't get me wrong, like throwing an iPhone at me. So, yes, you heard right, people. She threw an iPhone at me. 15 Pro Max, by the way. Let's get technical here. And it was a white one, by the way, too. So, but she denies this to this day. And I looked at her like, okay, you know what? You got to the point I couldn't even deal with it. My father couldn't deal with it. Both at the same time couldn't deal with it. Won't give her cigarettes, and I realized and I looked at her like, you would kill your own son for a cigarette. She goes, no, you're overreacting. And she's puffing away. You're like, then quit. Because I don't want to. But you guys so fucking nasty. It wasn't funny. My little Hercules, my dog at the time, was hiding under the bed how nasty she got. I have never seen that dog ever hide from her. So now you have the withdrawals too on top of that. People don't want to deal with withdrawals. They're nasty. They're really bad. Yeah. You can't, some drugs you can't just lean yourself off. You just go cold turkey and call it a day, and then give you some medication. Hopefully you don't, OD from withdrawals instead. I'm not sure I'm not saying that right. So if I'm wrong, please correct me in the comments.
No, I got you. But I guess still the question of, again, supply and demand is still ringing in my ear. Here's a slide here talking about, I'll list the countries that produce the most illegal drugs. But again, just some stats that I got here. So U.S. is clearly like we're the biggest abusers of drugs in the world by far. We outpace everybody. $3.7 trillion a year in I'm assuming that's either in cost or productivity or revenues. Federal government spends only $20 billion a year, however, on interventions. And this one I found interesting. Says nearly half of the people in the United States who turn 21 have experimented with illicit drugs. So we're not even talking, I wouldn't even put weed in that conversation or even a cigarette in that conversation or alcohol. You drank a beer in that situation. But that's pretty scary to me. When you have nearly half of the people, and again, so I don't think that's necessarily an indicator of poverty or what have you. But, some of the reasons, if it's happening at this level where so many people are trying it and with the potential to get hooked on it later on, then maybe should the discussion go on, again, besides just prevention, maybe go a little bit on the offensive against the countries that are supplying it. I mean, we hear this a lot in a lot of debates, the gun debate. Do you tackle the supply or do you deal with the demand or, different things? But that's scary to me. I'm fortunate now. And again, all my kids, they may not be, total angels, but pretty close. Yeah, they've dealt with a little beer or maybe a little weed in college or something like that they've confessed to me. But as far as I know, that's been like the limit, But when you talk about the illicit stuff, that again, that gets pretty scary. And again, I grew up in a time when, again, we were bombarded with anti-drug ads. I mean, the Mormon Church talked about not taking drugs. I mean, the McGruff, the crime dog, growing up. I mean, there were so many, things. You had the police officer would come and talk to us about drug use and all these things, trying to talk to us or whatnot. But is it really working? Just having talks, talk about how bad they are. Are you in fact maybe encouraging because again, every kid, a lot of kids having them this thing till you want to be bad or be looked at as cool. And, a lot of times we associate being bad with being cool, that it never had the effect. I mean, Nancy Reagan, she, in the 80s, she talked about a war on drugs and things like that. You've had the Nixon administration. I think they instituted a war on drugs, with, mixed results. So I'm asking, it's like, as far as strategies, I don't know what strategies are, the most productive. Is it simply just talking to your kids about drugs, or encouraging people not to do them, or do you have to cut the supply down at some point, or does it have to be a combination of the two?
So when I was in school in the States before I moved to Greece, I remember the whole campaign. The cops used to come in, like you said, the dog, everything. I can only speak for myself. Back then, I was scared about drugs. Anytime I heard about drugs, I used to run the other way. That's how scared I was about them.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I realized when I came back to the States, you hear a little weed here and there, but nothing else. So I think whatever it was doing, it was working really well. And it kind of died out. And then we went back straight back up again.
Mm-hmm.
So personally, I'll be straight up like I always been. I have smoked. I have drank. And yes, I have tried weed a couple of times.
Mm-hmm.
Not my cup of tea. That's my personal opinion. But have I tried anything hardcore, like say ecstasy or heroin or blow? No. The simple reason it scares the living shit out of me still to this day.
Right.
It takes
But was that fear, was that instilled in you, or just something you just felt internally, hey, that's not a good idea to do? What do you think was the main catalyst that
they put that shit into me in school?
Mm-hmm.
The American school district put it, because in Greece nobody really talked about it.
Really?
Yeah, we don't have campaigns, none of that stuff.
Mm.
It's kind of like you hope your parents talk about it, kind of thing. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Right.
You're gonna see it on the news, so you just stay away from it. But here they went to the source, the kids, the next generation. That was me and you. So at the time, that is, now we're old fucking shits. This one has hair, no, it doesn't. Sorry. But
the one without hair is better.
You know what?
As you were, please continue, sir.
So at the time that they were driving this on your head, you had in cartoons, G.I. Joe used to talk about it, Thundercats used to talk about it. You name it, it was on there. Power Rangers were talking about it. Freaking Spider-Man was talking about it. Comic books were talking about it. Freaking even Looney Tunes were talking about it one time, I think. Everybody was talking about it. And I think that kind of unconsciously got driven in my head, like, yeah, I better stay away from this shit. Doesn't matter what kind of drug it is, I stay away. I personally don't even like taking oxys, to be honest with you. When I have my kidney stone, they give me oxys. I'm like, I'm not taking this shit. Not because I was scared to get hooked on them. I just don't like how I feel on them, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I prefer being in pain before I take that shit, because I feel worse afterwards. When it wears off, oh man, I feel like 10 times worse. But that's me again. But
yeah,
I'm still scared of them to this day. I'm not touching that shit. Fuck that.
Yeah. So you think the campaigns overall were, now I know in your case it was helpful, but did you see it from your peers around you? Were they getting the message also, or they were like, well, guess what? You know what? Yeah, that's all we're doing it. I mean, what was,
I don't think,
because we got to also look at the cost. I mean, like all those campaigns, say no to drugs and all those kind of things back in the day or whatever. I guess we still got to measure effectiveness, because again, America is still the number one nation in the world for drug addictions. So, was all that money, was all that time worth it, or should have been put into something else? I guess the question. You're always going to have successes in, I think, anything that you do. You're going to have some successes and failures and whatnot. But overall, we have to ask ourselves, not just looking at it anecdotally, our own personal experience, was it useful given the cost? Again, the $3.73 trillion, $20 billion on interventions, and again, the young people. I don't know what exactly that they're doing today. I don't see as many anti-drug ads on TV as I used to, but certainly, again, if you saw half the people under 21 have dealt with some stuff, I mean, so do you think it was effective?
I'm gonna say no. The reason I say no because as I came across someone's Facebook recently, and you can tell who's on drugs, who's not usually. And these people are pretty fucked up. They haven't changed one bit since high school.
Mm.
They're still doing the same dumb shit they're doing: drinking, smoking, and using something. You grow up. You're almost 40. Time to grow up a little bit. I said smoking and drinking. We get that's that's the norm, whatever. But they're like partying every single day. They're skipping work. They're all living in one house. Come on, time to grow up.
Yeah. But is that a part of the issue? Like, what is either their growth is being stunted somehow? We talk about arrested development. Is it something with their life situation that's not preventing them to, or is have the drugs prevented them from advancing any further than where they are? So I think that's part of the conversation also. It's like, why are so many people hooked, or why are so many people trying? And if you find yourself in that situation, you're 35, 40 years old, you got no what would be considered the American dream or what have you, you're kind of living day to day and whatnot. Is that a driver as to why people feel the sense of hopelessness or whatever, and they just want to get high and they just want to, kind of veg out because, again, dealing with the reality of where they are might be too difficult to deal with the reality of it, so they just got to numb their pain with some substance of some kind?
I think it is actually more than that. I think it's mental health. People don't want to feel the pain, the let go, the hurt, whatever. What's the best way to put a Band-Aid over that, Paul?
Yeah, you just numb it, it's
exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that's the right way to do it, but it's definitely the wrong way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're numbing it and putting a Band-Aid. But when that wears off, you want to get back on it.
Yeah, it doesn't change the reality that you're in.
Yeah.
And people just decide it's easier to go back to it. But just want to go, again, just quickly, some of these here. So again, elite countries that produce the most drugs in the world. So India is a major dealer in, again, cannabis. Nigeria, which I was a little surprised at. Nigeria is number 9 on the list. 500 tons of cannabis a year. But again, this one might be a bit, now that countries are starting to legalize it now, may not be looked at the same way as it did maybe 10, 15 years ago. But certainly there's areas in the world, as they hear, Nigeria, estimated 8,900 hectares of cannabis plantations were found in 6 Nigerian regions. Then you got Peru as a major cocaine dealer, Myanmar, which was mentioned earlier as far as opium production, 795 tons per year. Philippines, again, another heroin spot. What drug you said they were dealing with in Greece? Was it heroin? What was the
heroin? Yeah, heroin.
Yeah, heroin. So again, Philippines, again, major producer. Brazil, again, another producer of cannabis. But again, I think worldviews are changing on that. Afghanistan, major opium producer. Bolivia with the cocaine, is 3 on the list, and then the last 2, Mexico, again, but it's cannabis. So again, I think this one, even though it seems like it's a lot, but the fact now that you even have people who are growing cannabis like commercially, it has commercial applications. People are starting to make clothing out of it again. They're making all kinds of different merchandise out of it. I don't know if it's these days, are people even considering cannabis in the same category? Now, again, Colombia for cocaine, again, I think for a lot of us, we kind of, knew that or what have you, is, Colombian drug cartels. I mean, I remember seeing Scarface back in the day, and they always talk about, Colombia being a major distributor of drugs in the world. But again, I'm just wondering, as time goes on, are people going to start to separate out the cannabis discussion from some of these hardcore things? Cocaine and heroin are generally still looked at as, something. So Alicia Olivetti's in here, says their parents are mentally ill and on drugs, which leads to their children getting involved in drugs and alcohol to deal with what's going on in their home life. Yeah, I think sometimes that's true. But what I was saying earlier was I think we're seeing this across the board. I knew preppy kids in high school whose parents made money and they weren't necessarily hooking on drugs. They were getting on drugs. Folks who are, in poor communities. I don't know if there's a specific pattern that you can identify. And certainly if your parents are on drugs, certainly that could be a major, catalyst for you possibly getting on them or using them. But I've seen a lot of people who come from that life never touched a drug because somehow they were able to see how it affected their parents, and they decided that they never drink. My dad was a big time drinker, and yet I never was inspired to drink. In fact, it was because of him, and sometimes the way I would see him, I loved him, but the way I would see him sometimes, that was like a motivator for me not to drink. So again, I don't know if we can necessarily tag on specifically that there's a specific cause as to why these things are happening, but I've seen it on all levels. You look at these prep kids, go to these prep high schools and whatnot, and there's a lot of drug culture. In fact, it's worse for them because they got money. So again, they can buy the stuff. Whereas a lot of people in other areas, it's a little harder to buy, but they have more access to resources to get things like that. So but that's kind of what we're exploring. And again, I appreciate the comment, but just in the chat, what do you think of the major causes of why so many Americans, or in developed nations in general, why are they so hooked on certainly on some of these more illicit substances? And again, do we need to separate? And again, I'll turn this back over to you, Pete. Mm-hmm. Do we need to separate cannabis in this drug discussion, or at least put it in the same lane as beer and cigarettes? Or do you think it's still on the illicit side of the aisle?
Let me touch base on a couple of things first, all right? Before I get to that one. Mm-hmm. The first one about the schools you were talking about, the preppy schools and all that stuff, right? So the preppy schools are more known for heavy, hardcore drugs. I worked for 2 different universities. ESU, East Rock University, a local university, state-run, no big deal. Lehigh University, that is a private school with very high end. A lot of kids get it flown in from all different countries, right? And I mentioned this on the gray area, actually. And I walked in one day, my fucking chef is doing a line of blow right in the middle of the prep table. I go, guess this is what we're doing now. Half these kids were on high and everything like that. Higher end because they have money. When you have money, you can do a lot of things. I used to have a park right behind their sorority houses. And I'm telling you, sometimes when I was leaving on the weekends, I was worried I might hit one of them because of how drunk they are and how high they were. Excuse me. That's how bad it was. Now, with the whole weed situation, I'm going to try to be non-biased with this as possible. Weed, it is a substance. It does change how you feel. But I think it wasn't even, they didn't consider that. I think they're more considered about how much money we can make off this shit. Mm-hmm. Now you're taxing it and everything because not everybody functions the same way. Saying like some people can get drunk as shit and get behind the wheel and nothing will happen. And some other people cannot even touch the wheel when they're drunk. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying you should be driving when you're drinking. I'm not saying that. But everybody functions differently. When I smoked, I couldn't touch a wheel. I was too fucked up. Mm-hmm. I know some other people can smoke a whole bowl and go and drive and go to work, and you're like,
well, my dad did that for decades. He could barely walk, but he could drive a car. I mean, it was the craziest thing I ever saw growing up. It was definitely a thing with him. But yeah, but do you think that overall the Um, do you think of it more in terms? 'Cause I know people used to try to label it like it's a gateway drug. Like, you get on that, you can get into other drugs, or do you think of it as mostly benign in terms of its overall impact? I know there's laws that are in place now where you can be driving under the influence. They didn't say, they don't, a lot of times they don't say drunk driving anymore. They say, like a driving under influence. And certainly there could be like a weed, but I don't even know how you measure that. You know what I mean? If you're like really weeded up, they can do the drug test, like alcohol test, they can measure your blood alcohol content. I don't know if they've come out with a weed content that says you're over the limit or whatever. They could just probably give you a test, like a walking test or something, to see if you're impaired, too impaired to drive. But I don't know how to manage that.
If they realize you're impaired and you pass the sobriety test, they can still take you and take your blood. If you deny it, you have the right to deny it. It's fine. But if you fail your the field test and they go for blood, you don't have a choice. They will take it by force. At that point. You're a prisoner at that point. You're in custody. You are a prisoner. And when I worked for the prison, they put you in a chair, they strap you down, literally strap you down like this, neck, back, and everything. They wrap your hand. They even put a mask over your face so you don't spit on them. And they strap you for 4 or 5 different ways. And the nurses have come out and take your blood. You like it or not. They'll ask you, are you willing to give a blood test? You can say no. That is your right. But when you're in custody, you're a prisoner. At this point, they can take it by force. I don't agree with that. But that's what they do behind closed doors. Things people don't want you to know on the news, on media, and stuff like that. Now, I'm out of that line of work. I passed the 90-day probation, me talking about stuff. I can talk about it. And I'm telling you, they will take it by force. I don't give a shit. I don't give any cop come up here and tell me, oh, no, we don't. They're fucking liars. They're fucking pigs. I'll tell them in their face. Even my cousin used to tell me, who's a retired detective, says, we take it by force. We don't give a shit. That's evidence. And every person they book, they get a percentage. See how that works?
Yeah.
So they know if you're on an influence and you pass that test, that's good for you. But if I don't know how they test the weed thing. By smell, most likely. If you smell like weed, that gives you a part of the cause. But how can they test it? There's no way with blood or piss. But piss, it takes a while to get through. I'm not sure. If anybody knows in the chat, please tell me. You can sit there and tell me, oh, that's illegal. Yeah, it is illegal, but how are you going to prove it? You're in custody. Your word versus theirs.
All right.
You got on that, Paul?
Yep. Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's hard to, it'd be hard to, unless you gave him, like, again, you get the walk test, walk in a straight line and count and do certain tests. If they think that you're too impaired to drive, I mean, that's ultimately what the driver is. So if you can't pass a sobriety test, not, in terms of the testing that they would have you to do, then yeah, I think they would have a probable cause to take you in, regardless of what you were on. But certainly if the car smells like weed, whatnot, then if you're going to give them probable cause. But again, I'm not sure what all the law is. Can you stop somebody, and just because you smell weed, is that probable cause to say step out the car? Can you deny search or whatever? I don't know what it is, and if it differs by district or precinct.
So from what I understand, most cops I know from PA all the way to New York, if they smell it, they can't really do it too much about it anymore. Now, if they say you have a roach, let's say something like this big, all right? Most likely, just be honest with you, get a fine, all right? Now, if you're on some influence, ask how much you smoke, yada, yada, be honest with them. Most likely, they're going to let you go no matter what. They'll give you a little fine, and that's it. That's all.
Yeah.
Now,
but if you can't move around on cannabis a minute before, like I said, I haven't seen anybody who's like, they talk about stoners, On other substances, yeah, but typically not on cannabis. I mean, their mood might be altered some, but again, overall, especially when you're talking about the hard stuff, like you see on the slide here, the countries where drug use, methamphetamines, what seems to dominate China. So again, China was also very high on that list in terms of developed nations that have drug issues. Their drug of choice seems to be methamphetamines in the orange. Here's another one for other drug types, like, so again, prescription drug problems. You see this a lot of in Europe, and also they indicate Venezuela, again, a lot of sedatives, tranquilizers, prescriptions, stimulants, solvents, and inhalants. Now that's something I remember from the 70s. I mean, people who talk about, I sniff alcohol to get high. So, or some sort of hard chemicals. People just sniff stuff just to get a high off something. That I remember from growing up. Guys used to be on that take, but it just kind of gives you perspectives because not everyone obviously is using the same things. Here, cannabis, again, very wide distribution, and again, especially in America, it's always been. Shout out to this Angry Stove Man. Thanks for stopping on through here tonight. We appreciate you. But again, globally, I mean, cannabis is generally used, whether it be illegal or not. It seems to be pretty prevalent across the world. So that's why when you see Mexico is like the number one grower of cannabis in the world, I don't know if people are going to look at that one differently than those other hard drugs. 'Cause I still think, especially now with people making the TBD ointments and stuff, and all those sleep aids, and they've come out with so many different uses for the plant now. It's almost like this miracle. But they used to do it back in the day, from what I understand. Like, a lot of the textile industry used cannabis before cotton. Cannabis was used in clothing manufacturing, and like I said, I started to see guys starting to make hats and underwear and bed sheets when we were on our cruise. You had this one of these luxury brand places that had all these luxury CBD. Thank you. You had all these people who were selling these luxury bed sheets and whatnot. 300,000 and 600,000 count stuff that was made out of cannabis. I mean, so it's. I think the perception of this one, even though it has a much more global distribution, I think the perception of it is generally changing over time. I think and in this country. It's still, now the interesting thing is, even though I think it's now legal for certainly medicinal use, I believe in over 40 states. I think as far as recreational, it's fewer, but it's still looked at. I think it's a class one. Correct me if I'm wrong. Boss man, someone knows in the back. Marijuana is still looked at as a class 1 drug on the same level as the heroines and the things like that, which I think is ridiculous. I don't know why it's still there, especially now that, as you said earlier, that they're making money off it now. I mean, people getting paid taxes. You got all these shops that are opening up all over. I got 4 in my 3-mile radius. I got 4 new shops that just opened up, dispensaries that just opened up within my area, like literally like across the street from one another. So I don't think that, but the fact that they still look at it as it's still on the class 1 schedule is still bizarre to me why that still is. But I think with this one, does the conversation need to change? Like I said, I have no desire to use it, but for people who find benefit to it, does it need to change as far as the conversation around it? Just wanted to share one more, I think, so again, opioids, again, pretty big in India, Iran, the Middle East, pretty big distribution there. Opium, heroin, big users in that area. And then I think I had one more. No, this is the last one I want to share. So again, talk about, it's a class 1 narcotic, which I don't get that,
It is?
But yeah.
That makes no fucking sense.
Yeah, but it's still on the schedule. That's why, again, there's been no federal. It's still not legal on the federal level. But again, several states have passed it even for recreational use. So go figure.
So I'll put it this way: if you work for the health industry, you're going to get drug tested. If you piss hot for weed, they will fail you for employment.
Yeah.
Simple. Second thing, most people don't know this. Now, if you get your card, you pretty much I can't. What is the right word for? You give up your rights for your Second Amendment right to carry arms. You cannot own a gun.
Right.
So you're taking one and losing the other. I think that's how they got you. Most people, oh, you can smoke, but you can't own a gun. Now we can come break in your house and do whatever we want with because you have no way to defend yourself. So, I those odds I don't like.
Yeah.
Because you're taking one of my most sacred amendments. Even you, Paul, you might not be a gun person. You might not even have a firearm. You probably don't even have a water gun in your house. Knowing you.
not at this time, no.
Yeah, you probably don't even know how it sounds. I love sound of that. But anyway, but my point is trying to get to is you're getting your card. Now you can buy, you go crazy or whatever, but you cannot own your gun ever again. Is it worth it? Giving out the right away? What do you think, Paul?
I said, I think it should definitely come off the schedule. I mean, I just don't understand the.
I agree. Smoking on weed, I don't see it being okay. Listen, this is my pushback to the government right now. If you're driving on influence, give me a fine, give me a ticket, whatever. I get it. If you tell me I can buy weed whenever I want, but I gotta stay in my own indoor homes, I cannot drive a motor vehicle like alcohol. Treat it just like alcohol. You cannot drive with you're on influence. I think that's a fair trade. Mm-hmm. Don't you agree, at least?
Yeah, I would. Because, like I said, there's no way to test for impairment. And why take all that time to have someone, walk in a straight line? And again, if you can't function on that, look, I know there's been athletes who smoke before games, baseball players, football players may take a hit.
Wrestlers.
Yeah, before going to the ring. So for some people, they're highly functional on the stuff. So how do you measure for it? I don't know. So yeah, it's
a great example. She got suspended from WWE because she got caught. She admitted I was smoking a little fucking weed because it relaxes me, it helps my anxiety, or whatever her fucking reason. I help her masturbate. I don't give a shit why. But they suspended her. A lot of people have lost their jobs through WWE because that's against their wearance policy. But that's the biggest problem you're worried about, a little weed. What about the other ones you're worried about, like steroids, heroin, oxys? Freaking Kurt Angle was literally addicted to oxys.
Oh yeah, I've heard several interviews with him and talk about how many substances he was on. But the crazy thing is he still was able to perform. I mean, that's the crazy thing about it. For him to be on all that stuff and still be able to go out there and do what he
and he said it. He said to Vince, if I don't let me go, I'm going to end up killing myself. Not literally putting a bullet in his head, meaning he's going to overdose like Eric. Who was it who overdosed? Fuck, I can't remember his name now. One of the wrestlers overdosed in the middle of he died in a ring. No, he died afterwards because how much he abused his body, his heart finally said.
Oh, are you talking about from the 90s? What, Brian Pillman? Is that?
No, it wasn't Pillman. It was Eddie Guerrero. He had a heart attack, but because that was linked to all his drug use over the years. But again, we're going back to the same thing. Weed has proven a lot of things that doesn't hurt. It actually lowers stress levels. It helps blood circulation. It helps decompress. So you're a little stoned. So why don't we make a law? You don't drive on it. You cannot be. You can't be high at work, obviously, because I know the next thing people are like, "Oh, it means I can smoke at work." No, don't smoke at work. Don't smoke when you're behind a wheel. Don't smoke when you're doing things. If it's like a cigar lounge, may have a weed lounge instead. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You can get an Uber or whatever. I think that's a fair trade.
I wouldn't mind that at all. But I think, like I said, yeah. But class 1 scheduling, I don't know what's holding that up, but hopefully that'll come down in the next few years. Last slide I here now, I'll just close out the slide again. U.S. drug overuse deaths over a 20-year period. So obviously, fentanyl has certainly got a lot of the attention, certainly in recent years, and the spikes in fentanyl deaths has certainly gone up. But again, you also see the prescription opioid deaths that are going up as well. And I know this became a reality for me maybe about 10 years ago, where I remember, like, you would always see, like, driving, you're at an intersection, you may see like a homeless person or something to that effect. And yeah, you may give money or you go by or whatever. But I started noticing that you had some, just in terms of them talking, like, you had some pretty, like, these people sounded like pretty intelligent, like, like they had some sort of knowledge or education or something. And I'm asking myself, it's like, why are these people begging, or why they're on, in this situation? That really started opening my eyes to, the whole opioid situation, that, this is yet another area. Like, it's not going into the hardcore drug infested areas or what have you, that that this was happening, but this is, like, again, prescriptions being written out for a lot of stuff. And I remember even watching on 60 Minutes, I think they had done a documentary on these opioid things, and it's to me, the hard area now is, who are the drug dealers now? Because these guys will go into these doctors, go into these places, getting these subscriptions for these opioids, and pharmaceutical companies. So again, we talk about the Colombian drug cartels. I don't know how much money those guys are raking in, but when you have some of these major drug companies who are profiting off of the drugs that they're making, again, who are the real G's now? I think that's a question that, and again, I'm going to be very careful with my words too, because I don't know what the sensitivity to this is, or certainly getting struck or what have you. But I'm just curious now, when it comes to these major manufacturers, what is going on, and, are they being held to task on some of the drugs that they're making? And again, a lot of people are switching over to cannabis in particular to get off of a lot of these Demerols and these things that were maybe initially given for pain management, but now they're hooked on them. They're trying to use the weed in order to kind of get themselves off it. So that's whole. So what do you think of that situation now with the drug companies? Are they in fact replacing the drug dealers or the drug cartels in terms of the outcomes that we're seeing with all these deaths from from this opioid use?
I think that these drug companies are making money over fist. Simple. Because they're making so much money right now, because they're selling more pills, meaning they're selling more prescriptions. So guess what? Guess who's winning? The drug companies at the end of the day. But I want to touch base that Snowman. Bossman, can you please highlight his last comment, please? Angry Snowman. So he lost a lot of friends. I want to touch base on this because this hits home for me a little bit too. So we had a family friend named Andrea. Andrea, a Greek kid, half Greek, half Indian. Always had a drug problem, mostly weed. But in the Greek community, weed is a drug no matter what. How you cut the apple, it's still a fucking drug. All right, in their eyes. The old school Greeks, like my mother, I'll put it this way, Paul. You walked in with your joint in your mouth because you think you're the devil, because that's sainted. So
smoking 2 and 3 packs of cigarettes is good, but one weed is okay.
Yeah, it makes no fucking sense. But he overdosed on heroin. Just kidding. So my father asked me, like, you going to see him in the hospital? Like, no, he's dead already to me, because he already overdosed. He's not coming out of this. He's been in coma for about 6 years. Every time I speak to his mother or father, says, oh, he's coming out of it eventually. He's not coming out of it. 6 years. If he comes out of it, he's not going to, even the doctor said he's not coming out of it. He's going to be a plant when he comes out of it. But they keep him on life support for some reason. And the question I'm going to ask you now, Paul, as a father, if you knew the doctor said, listen, your son or daughter is going to be a plant the rest of her life when if she ever comes out of coma, would you leave her on life support, or would you put her?
Oh, no, absolutely not. And I would explicitly tell my family the same thing. Do not leave me as a vegetable. If that machine is the only thing that's keeping me alive at this point, then unplug it. I don't believe in that. So yeah, and I probably need to tell my girls also. Yeah, if you're ever in a situation where you're on life support that way, I got to feel that most of them will probably say just kind of let it go. But yeah, that wouldn't be a situation I would prolong in that circumstance. So
that's why I want to bring that up, because too many people have died with pills and everything like that because they're popping like they're M&Ms.
Mm-hmm.
You realize, like, my mother at one point, she would never admit this. She was addicted to her painkillers because she was popping 2 or 3 at a time, to the point like I had to hide them. I had to lock them up in my safe.
Mm-hmm.
That's how bad it was getting. I had to rat them out to her. I do understand she was, at her age, every little thing hurts. And a little thing becomes a big thing, and then domino effects. And you've been there, Paul, obviously. So when after her first major surgery, her colon got removed, and the doctor said, "Do you need more painkillers?" And I looked at her like, "Are you sure you want it? Be careful what you say, because once you get these, they're iffies." I went to me like, and she goes, "Yeah, I need them because I'm still not paying." I told the doctor, "Yeah, she's gonna get some. Like, don't give me a lot. Just give me the bare minimum." He goes, "I'll do this. I'll give you a bare minimum, but I'm gonna give you except you 5 refills, I'll give you 10 instead because how small a dose it is. I can do that. I'll be right back." He goes. He comes back with an envelope this fucking big. I'm like, "What's that for?" "The paperwork for this." "The what?" "The paperwork. It takes about 45 minutes to get all this done." I'm like, 45 goddamn minutes? I'm like, the government wants to know where this shit goes. So, because how bad our drug problem is. That wasn't the issue. So I was talking to people, whatever, like, "Oh, my mom's in cancer," whatever, right? People find out my mom has oxygen. Like, people start knocking on my door. I haven't talked in a while, or calling me, or Facebook me, like, "Hey, man, you sure have oxygen?" Like, "Yeah, well, how'd you find this out?" "Oh, from the grapevine, from this and this." I'm like, "How much? How much for what?"
Wow,
No.
they shot hit you.
They're trying to buy my mom's medication.
Oh my god!
I'm like, get the fuck off my fucking property, man. Like, I'm not giving you my mom's medication she needs to not be in pain. Are you fucking retarded? She just went through major surgery for her cancer.
Right.
You think I'm gonna sell her fucking? I should slap you so fucking hard you become a sperm again, dumbass, and you should be swallowed next time. Simple as that.
Wow.
You got anything to say to that, Paul?
No, I mean that's pretty desperate. But that's the thing. I mean, it's the dependency, which again, it may have been prescribed early. So again, we talked about that definition of what a drug was earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Given for that particular purpose, but then you develop a dependency, which you cannot justify through prescription anymore, unless you go to one of these undercover guys. Again, they look up that 60 Minutes report. And they talk about some of these places, kind of underground places or whatnot, not necessarily in out on Front Street, and but then in order to get the stuff, you start doing things. You start breaking into houses. You start breaking into facilities and whatnot. Now you're in the legal system. So yeah, so people get desperate with trying to get hold of these substances. But again, we're in terms of accountability. And really, quite frankly, the effectiveness of these things. I mean, they definitely seem like they're effective to get you high, but again, I think a lot of players, especially professional athletes, I think they're making the choice to say, look, I would much rather do weed, as far as pain management in terms of helping me get through certain things than these hardcore things. Now I get it, if you had you had like a surgery, post-doc. And yeah, they put you on that stuff. Well, I've been there. They shot me up with some Demerol, and I was in heaven. I'll just say that. It was years after my auto accident, and but yeah, who are really the guys who are really profiting off of all this? And is it like I said, can we truly blame all this on the Colombians or the whatever? It's like, there's so much money that's being made in this space. And again, I still go back to that question earlier. Should we be taking this on full frontal, whether it's coming from Colombia, Afghanistan, if we know where the major drug centers are, at least on the illicit stuff, then again, should the fight be taken there? Or, send some of our, we had some of these SOP guys on earlier. If they want to, get I'm sure Mandrell may not agree with the SEAL team, but if they took some Green Berets and went down and did some stuff, I don't know. Would that be an effective use of our military forces if we went in and did that? Now, I know internationally they make a look at that as a declaring war on a country. I get that, but these guys tend to have a way of kind of getting in and out of a place without people knowing that they're there. So I don't know. That's what I'm saying. Should there be more of an offensive measure to cut down the supply? But if you wanted to deal on the demand side, I think it's too complicated, because again, you have people from every demographic, every ethnicity. It seems like everybody has a segment that can get on this stuff. And I don't know, how many interventions. You grow up in a good home, 2-family home or whatever, you still hear these stories about their kids getting into something. And
I feel bad for people who live in Philly. Philly has it the worst right now that I know of, because I drove Philly, north and south is the worst. It's literally Armageddon. Cars are flipped over, potholes. Things you see in a movie theater, you see there in real life. I was up there 2 years ago dropping somebody off when I was doing Uber. I'm like, and I looked at the guys like, you guys are 3 European guys and 3 European girls who have no fucking idea where you guys are getting, and I'm leaving you in the projects. Are you sure? Like, yep. Because they got a Airbnb for very cheap down there. Like, oh, you're fucked. I won't be surprised I see your face on a mail card next. I'll put it this way. I stopped to get gas. The gas station was armed with an AR-15. Security guard. That's how bad it is. If that's one of the cities that used to be known for brother love, caring, all this stuff, now is one of the worst drug scenes you ever seen in your life. People are crippled over. Needles. I thought I was backwards in time. I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? I could not wait to get out of that town. That's how bad it was.
Yeah, and no question. Like I said, the urban centers, obviously they're going to have it. You're going to see a lot of it just given the populations there. But it's native population reservations. It's like I said, it's the suburbs. It's the wealthy. It's everywhere. So again, that question of what is driving just our dependencies on drugs in general. If it's just solely about addiction, that's one thing. But I'm just saying that the bigger theme of like, I need a drug for everything now. In fact, I was watching this ad when I was playing the game. Game had ads in it. They had a Chewy for everything. Like, for all your emotional spectrum, to be happier, take this one. If you want to chill, take this one. If you want to go to sleep, take this one. If you want more, be more rigorous in bed, take this one. It's like they had a mood for every mood. There was a pill for it. And I'm just saying, like, where is the internal motivation to sort of make your own mood and happiness? Like, I was never motivated to drink in college, even though it was around me all the time. I mean, I was on one of those party floors at Rutgers, and it was just like every Thursday night, it was like beer, flowing everywhere. There was just all kinds of stuff that you can get into. It just never appealed, because I guess I was one of those kids, since I was one of the first members of my family to get to college. I was just happy to be there. And my thing was, I don't want to miss anything. I want to experience all of this. I want to, the experience. But if I get so drunk and whatnot, I pass out and I don't remember what happened the next day, I'm like, what fun is that? So again, it just never registered with me in terms of this idea that I got to be, I need something to have a good time, And even on the cruise that we're at, I mean, like I said, drinking is that's how they make their money. I mean, the money off the drinks they sell per drink. That's why they want you to buy these alcohol packages ahead of time, whether you use it up all or not. It's like money. We didn't buy it because the hardest drink that we had was like a Coke Zero. That's it. With dinner. I mean, we didn't, we didn't need anything else. And but for a lot of people, yeah, it's the to get into a good mood. I just don't understand. You're on a cruise ship or you're on vacation or whatever. Isn't that enough for you to be relaxed or in a good mood or happy that, hey, I'm on vacation. I can put my office phone down. I can kind of unwind. But it's like people just need to have those kind of substances, alcohol or whatever it is, in order to have a good time. I never thought that I needed anything in my system to have a good time, especially if it's something that I've been longing to do. Mm-hmm. And so I'm asking, I guess, a more general question. Why is it that people feel that in order to have a good time, that I need to have something in my system to be somewhat half inebriated, which kind of goes against, well, if you're kind of inebriated, then how can you even enjoy what you're doing?
The only thing I'm going to push back on that, Paul, is like having a beer or a glass of wine is not going to get you drunk or a beer.
No, it won't. That's what I'm saying. I'm talking about, the hard, the rum on the rocks, or the more heavier drinks. So you go back to 2, 3, and 4 of them.
Even one Captain Coke is not going to get you drunk. But when you go into 3, 4, 5 of them, that's where you start to get a little tipsy. And that's where I agree with you. Mm-hmm. Why do people do it? Why do people jump off buildings? Why do people smoke a cigarette?
There's not that many people who jump off buildings. That's my point. You don't have a lot of people who are jumping off of buildings. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it does. But it's not to the extent that people feel that they can. Like, we've been around so many people. Well, we'd be like, I'm sorry, we don't drink. They serve us something. The waiter or the waitress is going around with the tall glasses of champagne or whatever. It's like, I'm sorry, we don't drink. And he just uses these looks. When we went to Jamaica, it was like a running gag. Every place that we went to, there was like a rum tasting or something or whatever. It's like, yeah, come on, get the rum over. Yeah, sorry, we don't drink. They look at us like, what's the matter with you? It's like, why'd you come to Jamaica? I mean, people come to Jamaica to party and to drink. So you guys probably better be good party people, because obviously you guys aren't drinkers. But it's like, we just never found the need for any substances. I don't need an upper. I don't need a downer. I don't need anything really. Again, to have a good. So this almost like this social invention that says that, you go out, this is what you do. I'm like, why? And it's, again, you're paying money for probably the most expensive thing. Again, most of these establishments, the alcohol is the number one thing. If you don't have you know this from the restaurant business. If you don't have a liquor license, you listen out. And for some of these places, it takes years sometimes to get that liquor license. Once they get it, then that becomes the most profitable part of their business.
Also, people don't understand, there only are so many liquor licenses out. So I'm not sure the number, how many there are. So if you don't have one, you have to buy one sometimes from somebody. Mm-hmm. Then the transfer of liquor license goes to your name. Some liquor licenses, depending on the state, they can go up to thousands of dollars. Mm-hmm. If you don't have it, yeah, you're losing a lot of money. But that's why a lot of companies do B.O.B., bring your own booze. But again, you're still losing money, but you're not losing at least a clientele they're going to eat at least. Mm-hmm. That's a rough take back and forth. I have been having with people. Oh, I don't need a liquor license. Like, you don't. Technically, you don't. You're right. Mm-hmm. But it will help you make money end of the day. Mm-hmm. And people don't understand that. Mm-hmm. And that's the problem with folks. And I've seen people who don't have liquor license sell beer illegally, and they always get caught every single time. Because I just walk in undercover, sees you have beer back there, like, hey, can I get a beer? Yeah, what kind? Oh, let me get a Yingling. He gives him, he changes the money. After the transaction is done, he drops his badge on the table, like, let me see your business license now. Now you got it. That's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to go back and visit a comment. I don't know if you can post it, boss man, from Alicia. She talked about Now again, she is on some heavy, so receiving some heavy pain meds for my cancer treatments. Again, sorry to hear that. And I can honestly, after being on them for a year, I am adjusted to them all, and I fear that if the pain increases, I will need a higher dose. Yeah, I mean it's something that that's a lot of times where it starts. It starts, you would think, with the right purpose. Again, pain management, and especially if you had surgery for cancer and whatnot, it kind of starts there. But again, to be on something for more, also there's a timing thing. You know, if you need something to be on something more than a week, well, maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks, you know, depending on the type of surgery that you had, maybe that needs to be monitored in terms of, like, you know, how long do you know, or if you are, you know, I know people who have chronic pain, arthritis pain, you know, knee pain, you know, different things where you're taking something. Again, my sister, I used to see her regimen. Like, I saw, it was like pill boxes, taking 20, 30 pills in a shot, like boom, like it was again, like it was nothing. And like I said, I can't tell you again how happy I was when she told me that she was able to put away most of that stuff when she switched over to cannabis. So again, I'm not saying I'm pro. I certainly gained a lot of respect for it. I'm not saying that I'm pro. Yeah, go smoke, you know, cannabis and those things. But that's I think that's a healthy fear and concern. In that, you know, is there a way you can seek out other options and talk to somebody who doesn't have an interest in the game either? I mean, the one thing, because I know I know family members that have been on, you know, on prescription drugs for anxieties and you know, all kinds of other issues and whatnot. Sometimes when you hear the conversation, I'm asking myself, is this, you know, are they just writing the script, especially a psychiatrist? Are you just writing the script just so you're making money off of this? Or is this, you know, is this in the best interest of the person? Be taking, you know, antidepressant drugs and drugs for anxieties and these cocktails that they make up, and you just, you know, and some of these drugs, again, there's side effects to it. You know, there's weight gain, there's you know, other things that, especially if you're taking drugs for other, you know, pain management you have arthritis or whatever, you're mixing all these things together. You know, what are we creating, you know, at the end of the day? I think that's a, you know, that's just a burning question in my mind. But, you know, as we get towards, I guess, the end of the show, you know, we've been kind of going, you know, around with this. Again, I don't know if I don't have solutions, honestly. I mean, I think I would like to see, just my visceral, I would like to see a more take it to them approach in terms of trying to cut off the supply. I don't know how seriously or committed we are to that. Again, if we deployed special forces in some of these areas, would that be a benefit? I know we had some guys, you had Angry Snowman in here tonight. You had Mandrell, who was in here tonight. I don't know, would that be something worth pursuing? If you guys were former military or you know, experience or have worked on the front lines of this quote unquote war on drugs, would that be useful? Or would it cause more problems than it's looking to solve? But as we come to sort of closing thoughts on the show, Ghost, what are some of your views on how do we combat this, especially with young people? And you know, where do you think the fight, if you will, has to go? Because again, we're in one of the wealthiest countries in the world, but it seems like people just can't function without having at least half a dozen drugs in their system every day.
I really don't know. Honest truth, I don't know how can we put a stop to this, because this is a problem. Let's be honest here. But you can say, "Oh, put him in jail," or "Do this or do that." When at prison, most of those guys were in jail because of drugs. But a lot of them are not first offenders, second, third, or fourth. I had one guy, he was singing, "I love weed, I love cocaine," to the kitchen. I'm like, "Didn't you get locked up for cocaine?" "Yeah." And Don't you think he's not a great idea to not sing that? He goes, yeah, probably right. But I'll be honest with you, like, when first thing I'm gonna do, I have a little cocaine still left over. I'm gonna finish that off. It's a waste of money. I'm gonna like, you never fucking learn. He's gonna be back in prison. Simple as that. Not if he's going to be. You can tell who's going to be back, who's not. The kids are like their first time. You see they're scared. They want to be out. Some of them you can see they're not going to be coming back. Some of them will be back. There's one kid. He's been back. He's only 22. He's been in there at least 10 times already.
Wow.
Old drug charges. That's from a teenager to now. And he's not going to change. He doesn't want to change. The question is, how can we help these kids or young adults change the way they're thinking? That is the question.
Yeah. I mean, this is probably one of the grayest areas to be in. I don't think there's necessarily a black and white solution to it. Yes, talk to your kids, keep them busy. In activities that are positive, that are progressive, who they hang around, their influencers and whatnot. You can certainly do those things, but from a policy perspective, I do believe that certain things you can do. But again, this is something that again the world is wrestling with. Different drugs in different parts of the world that are more widely used than others, but everybody tends to have this issue with can you go through your day without having some sort of something, and again, I don't want to get to the extreme. Okay, coffee with caffeine, I mean that you can go into extremes with that. And again, there's some people who don't drink coffee, you only drink water and all those things. Perfectly fine, to salute your discipline for doing that. But are we becoming a nation like I think my man Eric, he had put in the chat early on about was it 1984 or was it? Trying to remember the title that Brave New World. That was one of those classes that you read in English class back in high school. But yeah, it just seems like a lot of the world it needs drugs to function, and I cited earlier one of my favorite movies of all time. It's a movie called Rollerball. Again, if someone hasn't watched it yet, I highly recommend. In fact, it was free on YouTube for some time. I don't know if it's still free now, but I remember watching it maybe a couple months ago. Again, it's like every time it's on, I tend to watch it, but it was free on YouTube for a minute. Rollerball, 1975, and just the elements that it talked about seemed very prophetic. Talked about, again, corporate and 50 years later, and we're talking about corporate influence, making corporate decisions, the drug culture, and the need for violence or just distractions, while corporations are kind of doing what they're doing to make money and to sort of subdue knowledge and information from people. Again, very prophetic sort of film. I would highly recommend somebody to watch that if you can find it out there on YouTube. Again, great film. But certainly it's going to closing thoughts. Any further as we close the show. Again, this one, we can go rounds and rounds on this one. I don't think we're going to land here, so we'll stay in the gray. And sometimes the purpose of the show is not necessarily to come to a solution, but just to have an intelligent conversation and flesh it out. We come from different life experiences. So I'm just grateful that I got 3 daughters who, for the most part, have come out clean on the other side. Not a lot of drug use. I know, drinking, yeah. And it's weird because my wife and I never drank. And this is good, shows you kids. Wife and I, we never drank. But my kids, ever since they turned 21, that was the first thing we wanted to do was to drink. So again, even the example that we tried to set, they certainly went their way with it, and so they do drink socially, and all we ask is that kind of be responsible for that. But they're pretty good at that. If they feel they're not good enough to travel, again, watch who you travel with, watch who you are around, who would take advantage of the situation. Take an Uber when you need to get home from a spot. And if you find yourself hungover or something afterwards or whatever, then don't do that again. So, so we've done with some of that show. But yeah, Jeff TV, good to see you, brother. And but it'll be you can catch the replay. But good, I appreciate you stopping through tonight. And again, Jeff, very high intellectual dude. I really like. I don't always agree with what he says, but he puts a lot of thought into what he says, and I appreciate the dialogue that he brings, especially to the flipping tables discussions on Tuesday nights. But go ahead as we look to close the show.
So I know you don't drink, but do you let your kids, daughters, bring alcohol or beer in the house?
No. That's kind of one of my peeves. That goes back to my dad, because the one thing that I would not do for him, in part because that was one of the things that led to. I mean, there was a lot of factors. In fact, if you watch the show that was on earlier, I talked about my mom with her mental illness. Where you mix mental illness with alcohol, not a good combination. And so again, I had to deal with him and growing up with that, and that was like a major catalyst as far as why I never drank, because of my dad. And so for me, it was like, yeah, I may buy cigarettes or something like that, but I'm not buying alcohol. And that was just something. So he had to accept that, especially once I became his main caretaker, that someone else can buy it for you. If they bring it over to your apartment, I'm not going to throw it out or anything like that, but don't ask me to buy it. And so even for my kids, I think I might have made an exception maybe once or twice. I think when my oldest daughter turned 21, she said she wanted to just bring a little champagne, with her friends or whatever, and I kind of capitulated. I said, okay. But then she was dating this one dude, and he was bringing his Crown Royale over, and he was kind of sloppy with it. So I go and clean out they were hanging out in the den. I went there and he kind of had it. I guess he didn't put it away or whatever. And I kind of took the bottle to him. I was like, not in the house. You do what I don't control what you do outside, but just don't bring it to my house. Anytime I've had parties, I tell them no alcohol. You want to go and do your thing outside, that's fine. I used to do a lot of boxing parties, a lot of fight parties. And, I would tell them, it's like, yeah, can we bring beer? And I was like, no, because, especially, then I don't want guys leaving and getting into stuff or whatever. And so I just didn't want that mess in the house. And some guys, quite frankly, they just start acting ill. Some people just kind of get loud and obnoxious when they drink. And I just didn't want that element in the house.
Yeah, you don't want them getting in an accident and have to leave your property too, because you're liable at that point too.
Yeah. Well, at least it used. I don't know. I think in New Jersey that law might have changed a little bit, but I know that was on the books for some time. You got to be real careful, especially if you're serving alcohol and they leave, they get into something, they can hold you. I don't know if that rule still applies. I got to check that one if that still applies in New Jersey. But I just knew that sometimes guys, when they would drink, sometimes you would get the ugly that came out of them as well, and then kind of mess up a situation. So you got to know your crowd, know your audience. If you're going to have people around you like that who just kind of get very loud and very obnoxious when they get a couple beers in them, it's just that's just who they are.
My second question is you don't allow any alcohol in the house, even your friends. So yes. So my last question was to you is, I'm assuming your kids are not smokers, cigarette smokers. I'm talking about.
No.
Let's say pretend they are for a minute. Would they be okay, obviously, outside the house? Let's say, front of your garage door, have a cigarette on the property.
On the property, I would probably raise an objection to that. No, like I said, I can't control what you do outside. Again, have they? My daughter, they admitted, they've done a little weed, and I'm just trying to check it out. Again, I can't stop that outside the house. I'm not happy to hear it. Again, like I said, your mother and I, we've been straight edges for your whole life. But again, you still have to fight against that pull of influence that promotes it as a lifestyle, and that's something that is there. But again, I can't be so hard on it to say like, okay, you're doing something wrong. Drinking in and of itself, even Bible, Jesus made water into wine, so I can't say that even having a glass of wine is sinful. So again, I don't take it to that extreme with it. I'm not, I'm not like a Mormon or somebody else who would have those sort of prohibitions against drinking, but where I do have some control, all I ask is, not in the house. You guys going out to dinner? You're gonna order whatever you're gonna order, whatnot. Fine, do all that outside. But when you come home, just leave it. Just leave it out. You don't have to bring it back with you. So again, that's just one of the probably the few rules. I don't have curfews. I don't say you better be home by midnight. No, I don't. We haven't instituted any of that stuff. It's like if we haven't trained you good enough now, then we're probably not gonna make much progress with that. So a couple of hard lines for me, but again, I admit and acknowledge that a lot of that prohibition comes from my background in dealing with my father, which is why on alcohol, I'm a bit stricter in terms of, now again, I don't mind going to like a bar and whatnot, but again, if I'm at a bar or bar restaurant, give me a Coke Zero, give me an iced tea, give me something else. Like I said, I don't need to drink. And I'm more than happy to be, if we're going out, I don't mind being the designated driver when you drink. But at the same time, I try to avoid people who are prone to drunkenness. Because those guys, I'm sure you've seen this too, guys who can get, can get ill when they get drunk.
Yeah.
And then you find yourself in situations like, oh man, I got to pull you out of a situation. You're getting into fights. You're saying stuff you shouldn't be saying. You're doing things you need to be doing. I'm like, especially at my age now, I don't need to be around that.
Right. So I assume when I come over your house again, if I light a cigarette, your wife probably would chase me off the property.
I would treat it as now that I would treat it as disrespectful. So I would definitely say that. But I would say this. Now again, if you had like I said, my sister was here with her medicinal. I say, go out on the porch. Do what you got to do for your medication. Like I said, I try to be reasonable when it comes to this thing. But like I said, inside the house or whatever. Look, if you want to go to the far end of the driveway or something like that, or the curbside, and get a little something in and come back, okay, you do what you got to do. At least you're showing me respect. But again, just to light it up, then no. And one thing also, you'll never, and one thing you never have to do, like some people, it's proper to bring like a bottle of wine when you go to someone's house for the first time. It's like, no. We'll take apple juice. We'll take apple cider. That's fine. You don't need to give us the wine. Because then I'll be like, okay, how do I get rid of it?
Proper, bring something. It doesn't have to be alcohol. It could be dessert. It could be ice cream. It could be flour, something.
There you go.
Do you feel the same thing about vape too? Like you don't even allow it on the property? I'm just curious now. This fascinates me, to be honest with you.
Vape, honestly, I don't know as much about. I mean, I've heard some of the dangers of vaping. Again, not in the house. If you need to go outside and take your little, few puffs. How long you typically vape for? Like, what's a session?
A minute or two.
Okay, so if you went out, did your thing, or you did it in the car, you come to my house, you're in my driveway, you need to take a couple of vapes before you come to the house, then again, I'm good with that also. Or if you say, look, I need to take a vape, let me get outside for a few minutes to do your thing or whatever and come back in the house. I don't think I'm going to trip over that either. But like I said, in the house there, I don't want to smell weed. I don't want to smell fragrances that I'm not familiar with, because I know vaping comes in all these different flavors and formulations. But just respect it, disrespectful. But I've had guys who wouldn't come to my house for fight parties and whatnot, who would not come because they couldn't drink. And I said, look, I respect that. You do what you got to do. But again, we're here. I got plenty of food. I ordered pizzas and buffalo wings, and we got the fellas and the crew together and whatnot. But because you can't drink, that's not like us and the fellowship. But the fight is Mike Tyson. It's all it's all this stuff. It's like, hey, the guys are here, but you need to get your liquor on. You got to get your your little something on, and that's it. Not generally, like I said, we try to avoid that.
What I was going to say was, I know a lot of people don't, I know a lot, like even my house, when I was a smoker, I used to go outside and smoke. I never smoked in my house.
Mm-hmm.
But you're going to the next level, I'll be honest with you, Paul. You don't even allow it on the property. I'm like, whoa, that's why it fascinates me. I never heard of something like that.
Again, property is a little
Harsh.
outside. Like I said, if you come into my driveway and you're in your car and you light it up or whatever, you do what you got to do, and then you come into the house. What am I going to say about that? No, you can't smoke in my driveway. So I wouldn't put property in the. I wouldn't put housing or just outside, like outside my door. Go to the garage. Go to the other end of the driveway. Just something where like people coming inside the house. I don't want them smelling your smoke as they come in. If you go on my front porch, create a smoking section, make a smoking section in the house. I mean,
That's a good point there. Hey, no. You have a cigar lounge just for me.
A cigar lounge. Yeah, that's a funny thing too. Even at work, I remember like it'd be like -20 outside, and smokers got to go outside. You got to have that cigarette. You're like bundled up, and you got. That's funny. That's funny to me. It's like, man, it's not cold enough for you to not get that cigarette in.
So what I was gonna say is, I understand, like even when you're smoking outside, you still smell like cigarettes afterwards. I'm not gonna deny that.
Mm-hmm.
But what I'm also gonna add to that is, I know a lot of people don't allow smoking in their house, including myself.
Right.
But when you're smoking outside, it's like whatever. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So I thought you didn't like on a property. The drinking I do understand, because it can get a little nasty at times.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like people, at least my friends, they know if we're drinking, we're having a beer or two, and that's it. We're not going crazy here. But again, I do understand, and I respect that. It just, to me, is just fascinating. That's all.
Right. Now, the thing, having said that too, now I would be concerned. A lot of people, I don't know how is there a way to smoke without it getting on you?
Cigarettes?
Yeah. You're outside. Because I mean, if you literally smoked outside, you come into the house and you bring that whole smell with you. Is there any way to avoid? Again, I'm a smoker, so I don't know if there is or not. But is there a way to keep it from you where it's just not all up in? You know, some people like sponges.
No, there's no way. It gets all over. That's why smokers always clothes smell like cigarettes. Vaping, I'll tell you that. If you hiccup with vapes, you know, you might smell like Fruity Pebbles outside, but once you literally walk away from it, it's off your head like that.
Yeah.
That's why vaping is a better alternate. I said it's not good for you as a better alternate versus cigarettes.
Mm.
Or same concept. It gets on your clothes because everything. You smell like it.
Mm.
You can't avoid it.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things like you can't damn if you do, damn if you don't kind of thing. Like you say, okay, you don't smoke in my house, but you know what? I don't care if you go outside in a garage and smoke next to your car. I'm cool with that.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But when you come in, oh, dude, you stink like cigarettes.
Yeah, I haven't had that experience yet. And even if you came in, you know, because you come in, you dab them up or whatever, you're all in close or whatnot, and then it gets on you, and then it's, again, especially if you're sensitive, now you're smelling it. To
it won't come on you. I'll tell you that for sure. But you're more sensitive because you don't smoke.
Correct.
And you're not around it.
Correct.
When like last time your dad used to smoke, right? You said, right?
Oh yeah. That was the hardest thing. It's like I grew up with that. Like you would have your door closed fully. I even put rags like under the door to try to, they say, like, in a fire you try to put rags under the door to keep the smoke from coming in. Didn't work half the time. So I grew up. So in terms of my secondhand smoke exposure is probably I had a good 10, 12 years of that in living with him in my senior year. So who knows? I might wind up getting it, lung cancer, something like that. Who knows? God forbid that happens. But I definitely, lived in a smoking environment for a number of years. And I remember when I did get my own place, again, that was just one of those things. Yeah. No smoking in the house, no drinking. So like I said, that just comes from my personal upbringing. That was just something I could just never get used to.
Like I was to the point, like my mom used to smoke. I literally had this conversation. Ted, it's funny, she smoked everywhere in the house.
Mhm.
from the laundry room to the bedrooms to anywhere you can think of.
Yeah.
And it never fazed me because people say, "You smell like cigarettes. Like you smoking?" Like, no, dude, I'm too young to smoke. What the fuck you talking about? And because I was my nose, my clothes, I was immune to it. I didn't smell it.
Mm.
Like, and she smoked in a car too. So you named it. I was around. I was around it for at least 20 plus years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Didn't
But see,
think
but I never developed a tolerance for it. That's to me, that's the difference. And my dad would go through easily like a pack a day, you know what I mean? But I never developed like, okay, this is normal. So even now, like even on like the cruise ship, or if I go to Atlantic City, when I like casinos, generally I go through a casino to kind of get from one side of it to another. Even in the casinos, they have like they call it non-smoking sections, but it's kind of ridiculous. I mean, like here's the non-smoking aisle, and then right next to it is the smoking aisle. You're not gonna separate. The smoke doesn't know not to go into those areas. So again, it's something I never developed a tolerance for, and then therefore, so again, I remain sensitive to it as a result. But casino, like I said, if I got to go from one end to the other and walk through a casino, not the most fun thing that I do, and I hold my breath most of the time as I'm going through there.
See, I'm so immune to it. I never,
Yeah.
now that I don't smoke as, I smell it. Like I walk into a room like, oh, this is a smoker room.
Yeah.
Or somebody says cigarette. Like when somebody walks who says has a cigarette, like, wow, you fucking stink. And it goes away in 5-10 minutes. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Right.
But it's still there. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So, call me crazy, and I know I had this argument before. I like cigar smell better than a cigarette smell, to be honest with you.
I would say this. I would probably agree with you. I think the smell of a cigar is much more aromatic than that of a cigarette. Mm-hmm. I still wouldn't necessarily want to be around it for long periods of time. I didn't grow up with a lot of guys who smoke cigars, quite frankly. My dad never really smoked cigars. My uncles, my brother never really were, big into the cigar smoking. But they were into cigarettes. In fact, my dad, Viceroy. I don't think they make them anymore, but Viceroy cigarettes was his brand for many years. If he couldn't get Viceroy, he would get the Marlboro 100s, and that was the thing that he that he enjoyed. But I've been in and around smoking lounges and whatnot. But again, would I want to be there all the time? Probably not. But I would certainly prefer that smell. It's sweet. It smells kind of on the sweet side.
And I have an argument with this. Like, the females hate the smell of cigars, but I disagree. But that means you can come with me to a cigar lounge and I smoke and you just hang out.
Just don't blow the stogie in my face. I would appreciate.
I would never do that to you. Actually, there's a meaning behind that, right?
I don't know exactly what it is, but I take it as a form of disrespect.
It could be disrespect. It depends who it is. But it means you want to, if you get the idea.
Yeah.
You want banger.
It's almost like spitting someone's face, basically.
Pretty much. But if you blow smoke in a female's face, you mean you want to sleep with her. That's what it means, really.
And vice versa. If she's smoking a cigar, she blows in your face, she's giving the same signal.
If I blow smoke in your face, no, I'm good.
Wow.
I don't think your wife would like that one.
No, I don't think so either.
So I do feel it's kind of disrespectful too. I hate when people do it to me. I literally smack people's cigars and cigarettes out of their fucking faces.
Oh wow,
they do that.
You got to that level? Yeah, I don't understand why a person would do that. Yeah,
like you smoke your whatever you're smoking. You're smoking a Cuban, Winston, whatever you're smoking. I don't care, but keep me in my space. Don't blow in my face. I understand you're blowing in the wind. Okay, I'm okay with that. But when you do it on purpose, and I ask you to stop doing it 3 times, I'm going to shove the cigarette up your ass.
Yeah. You better be ready to respond if they don't cut it out. But I think we're at the end of the show. I think we're going into the overtime a little bit. Any final closing thoughts as we close out the show?
Don't do drugs.
Amen to that. And again, really for people, start, I think taking some personal inventory. It's like, obviously, medications and whatnot that you need, for certain things, but, it's okay to sort of revisit some things. So again, I know for Alicia, she was talking earlier about the drugs that she's on. It's okay to go to a reevaluation. Do you need all those things? If you did, if you did come off them for a while, could you live with it? Or see if there's something else that's been developed in the course of time that could be better. Get second opinions from different pharmacists or from psychiatrists in terms of things to take. I know that whole field. I don't think there's one specific answer in terms of you take this drug and it's like the one drug for all time or whatnot. There might be other people who have another opinion on the side of things that you're on, but hopefully it doesn't turn into something that's where again you find yourself even more dependent on them, having to take stronger doses to get the same effect. And but for anyone who's really dealing with that, I know Angry Snowman was here earlier talking about losing some friends. Again, very sorry to hear lost your friends to heroin. But I think, larger conversations need to be had about, the state of young people and why so many are dying either from fentanyl, from heroin, and from these other drugs. How can we create an environment where, you can still have a good time but still, avoid some of these things. That's definitely, holistic medicine also, no doubt. But that's a conversation that, I think we need to be more honest about. And but the statistics are pretty staggering as to where they are. And again, like I said earlier, it affects every demographic. So, what kind of conversations we need to be having. But with that, thank you again for joining us. Again, for those of you who celebrate, again, Martin Luther King's holidays tomorrow. Again, happy holiday for those who celebrate. Obviously, it's a big day for the country tomorrow. And again, I won't go into that conversation, but I just, pray that, everything's peaceful. And that we just gonna, buckle in to deal with what we got to deal with. But hopefully it stays peaceful and that, we can still go on with our lives. So, and again, if you got the day off, enjoy your day off and, use it productively. I'll be shoveling snow tomorrow morning. So, that's going to be my workout. But for you guys, enjoy your week. For myself, Mr. Bennett, he is.
This is Sparta!
The Ghost of Sparta. This has been The Gray Area. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next week. Take care. God bless.